Cool. We are live. I'm just going to view this on the spots to make sure that that is the case because I don't trust technology. So if you are someone here early that jumped right in straight away, thank you for bearing with me as I be a Luddite and prove to myself that the GPS is not driving me into a lake or something along those lines. So if I click this to join, does it show the event will start soon? Well, the event should have started. Oh, great. It started on LinkedIn. Perfect. And it started on Facebook. Extra perfect. Okay, cool. So we're live. Take a big breath right into the microphone. As you know, I like to start things off. We're going to begin with a sip of tea. Do all of the things that should be edited out, but we don't because it's live. And this is how you know it's not an AI generated moment. Because AI can't, it's not, once we have generalized intelligence, it'll be able to do this. But up until this point, it cannot capture slurping of tea into a microphone by a bad host. That can't be done by AI yet. It can't do hands and it can't do tea slurps. So that's really important. If you're like, come on, Adam, get your act together and edit this better, this is for you. Welcome to Friday. Happy to have you all here. If you're listening to the podcast, welcome to Wednesday, I think is when we leave this or put this out. I'm very excited about our conversation today. What we're going to be doing is we've got the inimitable Mounica Veggelam and her client for today, at least, Brian Piper. And we're going to be doing live coaching and feedback kind of demonstration. So what that means is Mounica will be coaching Brian, and then I will be interrupting, as is my want, to provide feedback. Here's where you might be going. Here's what we're noticing. What are you noticing for you, Mounica? And I love this kind of format because I think coaching is oft misunderstood, and I think it's something that when we're being coached, like when we are a client, we're predisposed to like, you're doing great. You know, it's sort of like when someone is up on stage and they're public speaking, we don't want to see someone bomb. We want to see them do good. And so we're going to laugh a little bit more at their bad jokes, and we're going to sort of nod our head a little bit more, at least until we feel we can look at our phone and stop paying attention to the travesty happening on stage. But my point is we're vested to kind of encourage people. And what that does is it makes it very hard to get actual feedback about how things are going. And further, because oftentimes coaching is confidential, it's between the client and the person, there's even less of an opportunity for this sort of stuff. And so we do a lot of this kind of work in the Forge because it's so important and so valuable. And I think it's really important to bring it here to you as our listener so that you can kind of demystify this art, this science, this practice of coaching and kind of understand a little bit more. What is it? How does it work? And hopefully see some of the places you may be unaware you're stepping into people's process. We don't realize as humans how much our desire to be helpful and to help other people and to do all that stuff gets in the way. And boy, howdy does it get into the way. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Hey, Seth. I see Seth here on the stream with us. So I want to see, do I have the opportunity to record here? It looks like the answer to that is no, but this will be put out into the media landscape. So we'll go with it there. Before we dive into that, I just want to share a little bit about how my week's been. So this week, what I've noticed is a struggle to motivate myself. Simultaneously with that, I've had like a billion ideas explode in my brain. So kind of twofold. You know, there's been a bunch of work I've been doing to start to build out that course that I talked about last week on communicating, speaking like a leader, how we work with that. I've still had some inspiration around that. On top of that, I'm looking to try to create community, and some of you may have even had me reach out to you to ask for support with that. You know, there's a lot of different things on the go. There's clients that I'm in conversation with, possibly beginning to work together with. There, you know, all of these sort of things. And what I notice internally is simultaneously feeling like I'm doing a lot and feeling like I'm not doing enough, which probably some of you will be able to relate to. And also feeling like there's all of these cool things I could be doing. And then there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to do any of that. Actually, buddy, I want to sit on the couch and play video games, which I'm quite good at doing. And so that's been kind of the theme. And one of the ways that manifested itself this week was I had a call scheduled with my coach on Tuesday, and I just made up an excuse and lied to her and didn't have the call. And wrote her and said like, yeah, something's up. Can we reschedule? And then that, of course, what that did was it meant like, all right, I've got some spaciousness now in my schedule. I don't have to show up and talk about what's going on. I don't have to confront any of this. I don't have to turn towards any of it. It was very comfortable. Effectively, what I did was I quit that coaching conversation. You know, I chose out of it. And there's like a nice safety to that. I can just go and sit on the couch, which I did, and I can numb myself. Ah, blessed numbing. I don't have to worry about this discomfort I'm feeling, or I don't have to look deeply into it. I don't even have to let that have any time in my attention. Instead, what I have to worry about is like, how do I defeat this person that's trying to beat me at Street Fighter? And so I did that, and I kind of mulled over this the next couple of days. Like what I noticed was this voice like, ugh, you know, you're a liar, you're dishonest, blah, blah, blah. And then alongside with that, the desire to set that part aside too. I don't want to listen to you either. Just stop it. And I got really clear, like this sucks. And it's not what I'm committed to inside of my relationship with my coach. What I'm committed to inside my relationship with my coach is intimacy and integrity and authenticity, which indeed is what I'm committed to everywhere else in the world. My coach is sort of like the green room for the rest of my life, if you like. You know, like I get to practice showing up a particular way with her inside this very sacred, safe relationship, and then I can bring that elsewhere. And so, here's a situation where, of course, I want to be in integrity. Of course, I want to be a man of authenticity. And of course, I want more intimacy in my life. But the trouble is that these things are great in concept, but in practice, they require something of us. What they required of me was to then come to my coach and be like, hey, I did this thing. So I sent her a check-in form Thursday when we'd rescheduled a call. And I kind of like, here's a bunch of stuff going on. And then I put a little paragraph sort of 2/3 of the way down, like, oh, also I lied to you and made up an excuse. And so I'll clean that up. And then here's some more stuff, you know, kind of buried it there. And then we got on the phone and I asked, like, did you read my check-in form? Yeah, she said yes. I said, great. Okay, so then that makes it easier for me to come clean and share, blah, 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 blah. And of course, she you know, took it with tremendous amount of grace. And so the way I sought to clean this up was just to share like, hey, this is what was going on. Here's what I can distinguish. You know, there's a part of me that just doesn't want to show up to these calls because it's easier not to look, and it's a hassle, and it's annoying. It's annoying turning towards this stuff, and it's more comfortable to turn away from it. And I want to really not vilify that. I really want to honor that truth. I think a lot of us come into any kind of coaching or self-development relationship and we try to put a bullet in the head of that part of ourselves that would rather turn away from the stuff that's kind of uncomfortable to work with, or we try to cheerlead ourselves up enough so that we've got this full head of steam so that then we won't be stopped by that. But my experience is that is very fleeting. There's a half-life to how long that will go forward. And eventually, sure enough, it's going to catch up to us. And this part of ourselves that's like, yeah, but dude, you've been working hard. This is annoying. This is dumb. Whatever the story is, just give yourself the break. And to be clear, it's okay to give ourselves, there's nothing wrong with giving myself the break. The trouble is that it's in the way of like this greater commitment I have. And so, you know, I brought this to my coach and shared with her, and she just checked in like, is there anything else you need? You know, like my commitment is just to support you in whatever you need as you move through this and you work with this. And it's amazing what a gift it is to ourselves when we bring ourselves back into integrity. The challenge is that we have to show up and bring that thing forward, and then we have to be with the impact of it. The benefit of practicing this in a coaching relationship is that your coach is doing all of their work so that they can have the space for you to show up exactly the way you're showing up, kind of like a parent does. You know, like if your kid does something dumb, you as a parent hold them with a lot more grace than if some random stranger at the grocery store did the same thing. You know, if your kid runs up and kicks you in the ankle, you can hold them with a little more grace sometimes than if me, a stranger, came up and kicked you in the ankle. And so it's a place we get to practice. And then, of course, what I get from that is I get to see like, wow, there's a lot of other places in my life probably where I tend to push things aside, and then instead of bringing it forward, I just stew in the energy of I'm a liar, I'm a hypocrite, I'm inauthentic, I'm not all of that sort of stuff. So this is part of the miracle of coaching, in my opinion and experience, is that it gives us a really safe place to begin to practice something new. And it's not easy, at least for me. It's always a challenge to put that forward. But when we practice that, what I find is that life becomes simpler. Not easy. It's hard because of its simplicity, but it becomes really simple. Like, oh, when I notice that I've done something that's out of integrity or that I'm ruminating on, bring that forward, be with the person, be with the experience, clean up the mess I might have created, and then we can move on and we can do the next thing. I don't have to continually hold this energy here and like, do I tell her this week? Do I tell her next week? Blah, 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 blah. So the headlines for this week are I'm a liar. I'm a liar, but I'm also a man who's committed to the practice of integrity. There's one other thing that I want to speak to on this matter, and then we're going to bring on our guests. The idea, like the normative ideal we have, or the way we hold integrity, is that if you're someone with integrity, you never do this stuff. Like if you had integrity, you wouldn't ever make an excuse. And every time you make an excuse from that context, you either don't have integrity, or you have to create an excuse for why that situation was okay, and you're still someone with integrity. And that sucks as a context. It's a very losing game to be in the playing of, because it doesn't leave any room for our humanity. And part of our humanity is that we're going to quit sometimes. We're going to give up. We're going to want to shrug our shoulders. We're going to be tired. We're going to feel grouchy. We're going to have really, really good, valid reasons that parts of our body and our being have come up with for why not show up to the thing, why not do the thing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And real integrity is the porn of integrity, we'll call it, is this idea that you'll just always do the thing you say you'll do. And once you're there, you'll do it, and that'll be that. The reality of integrity is that it's about coming to terms with these things that we do, and just being willing to bring them forward, and then to sit in the relationship. And there's always a risk every time we do that. You know, the risk can be that someone says, well, I hate you for that, and I don't want anything to do with you. You know, if you're someone who's been cheating on your partner for the last 5 years, once a week, and you're like, all right, I'm going to bring that forward, the risk is that that mess will be too big to clean up. That's the cost. You know, we have to be willing to be with the person that we've had an impact on from our actions, and stay with them in relationship to the point where we can actually clean it up and make good on what we've created. And what I find we're left with is often a disbelief that we could clean things up, or a fear that it's going to be too great of a cost to bear. And so what we do is we continue to hold on to this place where we're out of integrity, and that festers. And the more we have this one little spot where we're out of integrity, the next time it's a little easier to bring another out of integrity spot and hold on to that. And then the third time, you know, the first time you've got one breakdown in integrity, we'll call it. And so you're adding another, it's like half as much as the first time. And then the next time you add another piece, it's like just a third more, and then just a quarter more, because you already are holding on to a bunch of this stuff. And so it becomes easier and easier and easier to hold ourselves kind of out of alignment with our truth, until we end up with like all of this stuff that we can no longer hang on to. And then we have these huge blow-ups and breakdowns. And then that's where we see a lot of our leaders today, these big scandals or issues that have been built up over time, because they haven't had a way or even a model to walk this back. By the way, politics is not the place to look for this model. That's not the place where this sort of practice of integrity we're talking about is born from, because we are way too fickle as a public, and that's just not the game of politics. So what I find helpful is to set aside the idea like, why should I bring myself into integrity? This person leading my country is not even willing to do that. Forget about them. We got to turn the attention towards ourselves. Let's see what Seth just wrote here. I recently shared with my coach that I was angry with her and it was tough, but then it felt good to be back in integrity by speaking my truth. I find often, we can't leave a place until we've been there. And so much of the places that we get stuck as humans is we're trying to show up to a relationship, like we're trying to be in an intimate relationship while secretly harboring resentment and contempt for the partner that we're over there with. And that's going to be a breakdown in integrity, in intimacy. If we're constantly holding a piece of ourselves separate from them, then it's very hard to have intimacy. This does not mean we just go and breathe hot fire into their face and just tell them all of our dirtiest, horriblest thoughts about them. We need support. We need structures like coaching, like therapy, where we can share this stuff and work through it with some art, especially if this is something new to you. But there's real magic in this kind of practice. Thanks for sharing that, Seth, and thanks for bringing that to your coach. Okay, so we're going to dive in here. I think what we're going to do is, Brian and Monica, let's just get you guys, let's have you turn your cameras on, turn on your mics, and then I'm going to add you to the stage. Pow, pow, you've been added to the stage. Look at these cool titles too. Leadership coach, amazing. Author, speaker, and AI enthusiast. That's pretty cool. Welcome. It's good to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Thank you. You need a title too, Adam.
Yes, I will. Here, let's do this. We'll go headline, and it'll be like AI Bozo. There we go. I occasionally use AI, and I don't know if the highest use of AI is to generate cute pictures of Boston Terriers wearing newspaper boy hats.
Absolutely.
But it is one thing you can use them for. Okay. So Monica, we're going to dive in pretty quick. I'm going to hand over the reins to you. And I think what I'll do is I will leave my camera on. I'm going to mute my mic and I'll just sit here and then I'll jump in at a few points throughout the conversation today. And then provide any feedback that I've got. And then we'll wind down in about an hour. That sound good to you?
Yeah. Is it up to me to watch the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to we've got a hard stop at 1:15. So you can kind of manage that time as you like. And I might send you a message just to be like, hey, heads up, you're deep in the jungle with your client and you've got 5 minutes left, if that's the way it's going. But I don't think that will be how you go. I know how you work. Cool. Okay. So I'll turn it over to you. I will mute myself and I will jump in and interrupt at some point.
All right. Okay. Hey, Brian. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks. Thank you.
Is there anything you want to say to the audience or anything you want to put in before we jump into coach?
Let's jump right in.
Okay, great. So this might sound a bit weird because we have been in conversation, but I would still like to make this explicit. Over the next 1 hour, do I have your permission to coach?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So how we'll do this is, Adam said 1 hour. So we'll just start with some like loose exploration. And then if there are places where I'm curious about or you might be curious about, so we'll dive into those places. And then you remember like our safe word.
Absolutely.
Cool. For anyone watching, we decided on a safe word if this gets like too uncomfortable. So that's what we are talking about. All right, Brian. Say we have a magic wand and together we can wave it and get anything shifted in your life, career, or work. What would that shift be?
Yeah, I think at least on the career side would be providing more like freedom and flexibility where I'm pursuing what I feel like will be the evolution of my career as opposed to, I've always worked for bosses in different companies where I've always been like contributing to the organization. And I've always felt like my personal brand and my like long-term career goals have always been a side project for me. So really trying to figure out the right way and the right time to transition from, full-time employee to full-time creator, self-promoter, you know, um, that sort of thing.
Hmm. So you're looking to transition out of full-time employment. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. So, what about that is something that you find challenging or something that you want support with that we can address in the next 1 hour?
Yeah, and I think the biggest concern is just the uncertainty about it. So, a full-time job, you feel very comfortable. It feels very stable, even though we all know in this economy, any job could, fizzle away at any point. Um, but, having that steady paycheck, having that consistency. My wife and I have 6 kids between the two of us. We've got 4 in college right now. So, there's a financial need that we, have to continue to maintain on a very consistent basis so that we can make sure that we're giving our kids everything that we want to give them. Um, you know, Healthcare concerns, all the benefits, things like that. So, there's that side of the coin where you feel comfortable, you get into the point with a full-time job where it just kind of is on autopilot and you're just coasting along. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've really been dabbling and have like a side hustle going where I'm doing some consulting work and been writing books and doing speaking. And that has really, continued to grow. And now it's gotten to the point where I feel that I could line things up and I could really focus on that and step out of the full-time job. Um, Having, most of the kids out of the house now gives us more time. My wife has you know, a good job, stable job, and we can get benefits through her. So, we've been having a lot of conversations about the opportunities. So it feels like everything's aligned, everything's ready, but I'm just hesitant to pull the trigger. And, I'm just kind of waiting for the universe to give me some sign that it's time to go. But until then, I've just kind of been, waiting along and letting things kind of stay in this limbo space where I'm not super happy with. I mean, I like what I'm doing at my job. I like the opportunities in my job, but I've been in the same role for 8 years now. And there's really nothing on the horizon that indicates that there's going to be some big windfall where I'm going to get like a huge promotion or anything. Um, so it just kind of feels like everything's, kind of waiting for something to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, like it looks like you've waited for quite some time, and you've been aware of that, and you've been thinking through this quite a bit.
Yeah. And, every year I end up getting like more speaking opportunities and exposure to different audiences. And, that initially when I started doing the public speaking, there was a lot of imposter syndrome, as is fairly common with most speakers. But I find that I still get that sometimes. And I've been doing this for, 4 or 5 years. I've been working with different, speaking coaches. And I get great feedback when I come off the stage and in the surveys that people fill out. So I'm not sure where that, imposter syndrome, why that keeps coming up and how to, best manage that. And even in my career, like, a lot of times I will ask for things or I'll take on things in addition to, what I normally do in my full-time role. And almost every time that I take one of those things on, I always feel like I'm not quite up to the challenge, but I do it, I pursue it. I haven't had any opportunities that I've taken on that haven't, turned out well, that I haven't gotten accolades for. But a lot of times there's that internal struggle, like, what am I doing? Why did I take this on? I should just quit doing that and let somebody else do it because they're going to do a better job with it. So yeah, a lot of internal conversations that those external audiences don't get to see very often.
Yeah, I so relate to that. And I do see the accolades, like the 4 books behind you. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that the shift you want is to um, explore the evolution of your career, and it seems like there is some imposter syndrome that shows up in public speaking, and there's some uncertainty with the career part right now. Would you say it's kind of like same similar flavor or something else?
No, I'd say that's spot on, and really seems to be holding me back from reaching my full potential. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, got it. So what would the best, most ideal scenario look like for you? Let's say we move that out of the way for you.
yeah, if I could do full-time consulting, be my own boss, select my own customers. I've already got several clients that I've done consulting with in the past who have all said, if you do this, if decide to do this full time, let us know. We'll definitely leverage you. And now with all the work that I'm doing in my current position around like AI integration and scaling and those sorts of things, there's a ton of opportunities that are out there right now in the market and in my industry that feel like low hanging fruit. The presentations that I give, I get a lot of people come up to me afterwards asking me about consulting. I had a guy sit down with me at breakfast 2 days ago. He was like, why are you not doing this full time? We could really use your help. So it seems like the opportunities are there. I just haven't been pursuing them. So yeah, being able to, you know, do my own consulting, work on my own content channel so that I'm building an audience, growing a community. I think that's really kind of the future of marketing in this kind of AI generated space that we're seeing more and more AI content come out on the market. I think being able to connect with people and form that human connection is going to be a differentiator. So I feel like I need to step up. Like I need to get on this right now before those opportunities disappear because everybody's just going to be consuming, you know, content on demand that they basically ask these AI tools for and they get delivered whatever it is that they're looking for. So I feel like now is the time to really lean into that human side of content, um, more public speaking. I do a lot of like free speaking gigs or where they just cover my like cost of expenses. So I'm trying to figure out ways to turn that into, paid speaking gigs where I come in and do more corporate speaking. So just feels like there's a lot of balls up in the air right now. So if I could like turn the switch and make everything into the state that I'd want, yeah, I'd be working for myself, consulting, speaking, and really helping people at a bigger scale than I can do, at any job that I would have.
Sorry, my handwriting is slow. I'm noting down a few things so that I keep track. What I heard from you is you'll be helping people at a larger scale, and you want to help people, especially because there's all this AI stuff going on, and you think that human interaction is so important, which I so agree with. One more time somebody says like the AI outputs, I wrote a post about this the other day, like foster human connection and growth, and I'm like, no. Well, that's my stuff, but let's put that aside. So you said a couple of things. Can you like summarize for me what, let's say there's like an ideal day for few months from now, few years from now, or even tomorrow? What would that ideal day look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a fairly consistent, morning routine where, I get up, I do some cardio, do some cold plunging, go out and do some, um, anaerobic workouts. So I always like to start off physically, clear my head. Some days at work, I have so much on my plate that, it cuts into that now I have to limit that because I've got, 9 o'clock meetings set up that my boss set up. And so, or I have to get up earlier than I really want to. Um, so having that flexibility of being able to set my own schedule, being able to pick and choose when I want to engage with my clients or when I want to do the work. Sometimes I'm much more productive in the morning if I can just focus and do the writing I want to do or do the content creation that I want to do. A lot of times I'll do my consulting work first thing in the morning because it gets it out of the way before I start getting into my, slew of meetings throughout the day. So, being able to kind of set my own schedule in the morning and then, create whatever new content I want to create, get that out there, things that I'm passionate about, areas that, things that specifically people have asked me, how do you do this? How do you manage this? I want to create all those tutorials. I want to put all that content out there and grow that connection with my audience. Then I'd spend some time in the community that I, hope to build where I can engage with those people. I can help them solve their problems, answer their questions. I want to bring in other experts, other influencers who I'm, connected with, friends with, they're in my network, so that we can have these sort of conversations. And then in the afternoon, go out and look for new opportunities, find new speaking uh, available opportunities that are out there, and just continue to grow my network, expand my reach, build my community, and then be able to, like, if it's a beautiful day, be able to go out and take a walk or, spend some time with my wife, and then be able to like shut things down and turn off in the evening so that we can, go out and spend the evening together or go, visit our kids or something like that. But just being able to have the flexibility where I can say, I'm not going to take those meetings today, or I'm going to spend my time focusing on community today, or I'm going to spend time just doing content creation today where I have control over that. And I know with, having consulting clients, you have deadlines, you have things that you need to deliver on. So, there are times where absolutely you have to take a meeting where you don't necessarily want to take a meeting, but it's not 9 to 5 every day in meetings where nothing is getting accomplished and people are just, talking to hear themselves talk, and it all could have been handled in a 5-minute email. Um, so I think that would be a good day for me.
Mm, yeah, for sure. So I'm curious in like what you have shared. If that were all possible, what is something new that will become available for you, like the experience?
Well, one of the things, so I recently got an opportunity to go teach in Thailand for 3 weeks and really wanted to do it. Thought it was a great opportunity. Figured out, how I would be able to still work and get my work done that I do at my full-time job, but be able to do that remote. And when I went and presented that to my boss, they just said, no, we can't support that. We need you here. We need you on site. Um, so being able to pick and choose the opportunities that I pursue, that is something that I don't currently have in my role. Um, when I started doing so much presenting and speaking, at first the university was on board because I was representing them and, it was great. When my first book came out, it turned into a lot more speaking gigs than they thought it was going to be. And, they had to pull back, just they can't support that many conferences and that many speaking events. So then I had to end up, paying for those myself, using my own vacation to do that. But it was something that I was passionate about. I knew that was a, a pathway to career growth and to building my personal brand. So, being able to have the flexibility to pursue the opportunities that I know are going to be most valuable for me and for my audience, for the community that I'm, starting to build. I think that would be the biggest unlock for me.
Yeah, makes sense. So, what is having shared all that? What is a theme you're noticing in what will become available for you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the biggest theme that I see from, from where I want to be is the freedom and the flexibility. I know it's going to be more work than I do in my current role, because I'm going to be more passionate about it. It's going to be more important to me. I know I'm going to be serving my audience as opposed to just serving my boss and having to do things that I don't think are really aligned with, you know, reaching the goals that I think the business needs to reach. Um, and I just don't have the control over that. I don't have the freedom. I don't have the flexibility to be able to say, I don't think this is the right choice right now. Whereas if I'm running my own business, then I'll have that flexibility and that freedom.
So, you'll have an experience of more flexibility when you have this. Let's say you're able to get that. What will you do from there?
And before you answer that, Brian, let me just jump in. So you're both doing amazing. Really, really great work so far, Monica. And you've got a client who's like game. It's so nice.
Yeah.
He's so willing to share and to speak to his process. So let's just speak a little bit to where you find like where you're looking, just so that we can put that into the space so that the audience understands and can get that. So where would you say we are at in terms of like the arc of the conversation?
I think we are exploring. I am personally very curious about what the larger vision is for Brian. So, like I'm picking up some themes and I'm trying to see if Brian realizes those themes, and then I'm curious about what those themes are about.
To what end?
Like to what end? Like what would he be doing more of? What is he really like desiring, and
That's
what
what
is
you're
like
wondering, right?
I'm wondering, yeah.
And you're wanting to ask about that. To what end would you want to ask? Like, why would you want to ask about that?
Yeah, because he mentioned that there's some uncertainty in making the jump, and like some imposter syndrome, etc. So I'm wondering, like, if we get clear on the vision, then there is basically we can see how that's coming into the way, and if that is really the thing in the way or something else.
I see. So your thinking is kind of like, if we got clear on the big enough vision, then it would maybe speak to like perhaps this is why he's got uncertainty, or like help you see what's getting in the way.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so the like it occurs, I'm going to speak this to the audience as well, but like you know this very well in coaching, it's sort of where are they? So we're pretty clear on where Brian is.
Right.
Where do they want to be? What is it that they want to create? And sometimes people give us like, I want to make $6 billion in a year. And it's like, oh, that's fine, but like what for? Like, is there some bigger vision beyond that? And then there's what's the gap between those two things. And once we're clear on the gap, then we coach to close the gap. So I noticed, you're 25 minutes in. So
we are? I didn't notice the time.
Good thing
I did say that I'll watch it, but I didn't. Okay.
It's all good. So 25, so approaching the halfway mark. And I would say you're doing a lot of exploration of like, where does he want to get to? But the gap is currently pretty nebulous, right? It's like, we know uncertainty and then maybe imposter syndrome. And so what I would suggest is to start to explore a little bit more of the gap, because he actually seems pretty clear on like what he wants and what for. And if I'm hearing you right, you're thinking like, well, maybe by getting more clear on like the deeper vision or whatever, that's going to answer the gap. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you might instead just start bringing curiosity to like, what is this uncertainty about? Like exploring that, because that's really the thing that's got him stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. And I'm also thinking somewhere that the vision seems clear on his side, but maybe like not clear in the space in terms of what exactly he is going towards. As in, is it community? Is it full-time consulting? Or is it the flexibility, or is it all of that together? So I think somewhere I want to get like a clearer statement around that. But I see what you're pointing to. It seems that he's clear over there.
Yeah, and so as a coach, right, you have to kind of make a bit of a decision here, which is like, maybe this conversation is really just about getting Brian super clear on what it is he wants to create. But if I'm not hearing so much from him like like an angst, or sort of like, I'm just not super clear on what it is. And so if that's what you're sensing is really going to support him, you might want to check that out with the client, because it occurs like more like the part that we're stepping over a little bit is that uncertainty, and that like there's a thing that stopped him, even though he's really clear on like, more freedom. He's getting all these people that are like, dude, you got to do this full time. Please let me throw money at you, all of that sort of stuff. So it sounds like he's actually pretty clear on where he wants to get to, even if it's not fully formed. And it's not to say any of the exploration you've done is wrong, but just given you're coming up to about the halfway mark, this is where you want to really, until that gap is clear, there's not much coaching to do. And sometimes what the coaching is about is just getting someone clear on what they want. My sense is this probably isn't that conversation.
Yeah, makes sense.
Is that how it occurs for you, or does it occur differently?
I'm going to check with Brian.
Okay, great. That means I get to talk less. I'm going to turn off my mic. I'm also going to turn on my camera just to run to the bathroom, but you're in my ear, and I'll be right back immediately, and I'm going to turn it over to you, okay?
Cool. Thanks, Adam.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Brian, so do you, like, after that little bit share, do you feel like you are very clear on what is it that you are going towards and what you want to create?
Yeah, I definitely have like a plan. I've spent a lot of time kind of planning out my ideal business format, what I want to focus on, why I am passionate about this. One of the things that I love the most about speaking is coming off of the stage and then hearing that feedback from people like, this was so helpful. I can take things away from this right now and start using it. And then, down the road, hearing back from them how much that helped them and how much easier it made their job or whatever it was. So pretty clear on what it is that I want to do with my own business.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. And I definitely sense that energy, and it's coming across very, I don't know, palpably. Is that a word?
Yep.
Anyways. Excuse me. So what is like a next step for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've got, the network build, I've got the opportunities kind of waiting for me. I think the next step would really just be to make the move and to tell my boss that I'm leaving the company and, head out on my own. And I've been telling myself for the last, 4 or 5 months that, I just need to do this. I need to pull the trigger. There were some opportunities that were presenting themselves at work that I was like, oh, I really want to do this. I want to get through this particular transition. I want to have this exact experience because this will, pay off down the road. And then I've done those. So, I've kind of hit all the like big milestones that I wanted to hit. And for the last month or two, I've kind of felt like I'm just kind of coasting and waiting for like some sign from the universe to say, here you go, here's your moment, So it's weird. It's that same like imposter syndrome, hesitancy, wondering, like, not being able to see the future. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And, outside of my work life, like all my hobbies are very focused on like taking chances and taking risks and things like that. But I just can't seem to integrate that into, the career focus and being able to make that jump without, having all the anxiety about it.
Mm. So what is the anxiety about? What do you fear would happen?
Yeah, there's a lot of, there's all the uncertainty, like, I was saying the stability of a job, the predictability of a job, it's kind of there. You don't have to think too much about it. You don't have to work too hard, just work hard enough to keep your job. Um, but I know if I got into, working for myself, it would be, it's all on me. I've got to find the clients. I've got to do the work. I've got to deliver. Um, and I've had so th- my current wife is my second wife, and my first marriage, really kind of fell apart from a lot of financial strain that was happening at the time. Young kids, um, not a great job, got laid off, and it really put a lot of strain on the relationship. Um, And, I've talked with my current wife about this, and she is on board with, supporting me however. And, we've talked about, if we need to cut back, how we can do that if things don't work well. I could do this. We've got enough savings. I could do this for 6 months. And if it just doesn't work out, I could certainly come back and, get another job. Um, but yeah, there's still just a lot of hesitancy, in the back of my mind, kind of wondering if, if I step into this and everything falls apart, then it's all on me.
Mm. And so you have a plan and you have had the conversations and partnership with your wife about it. And there seems to be like something that you said that caught my attention, which is like, I'll have to work hard and it's all on me. Would you say that's the fear?
No, I have worked for myself years ago, and doing hard work has never been a issue for me, especially for something that I am motivated about or interested in. All the consulting work that I do, I over deliver. I intentionally, you know, provide more than the clients have asked for. Um, it it becomes a bit of an obsession where I'm always thinking about how to, um, give them more, how to deliver value to them. Whereas, in my job, I get assigned a task, I do the task, and I'm not always looking for that opportunity to overperform. So I don't think it's like the fear of having to work hard or do more, especially if it's something that I know I'm passionate about and interested in, and I know that I'm helping people and providing value. um, but there is that uncertainty, like especially in today's market, where you're not sure what the landscape is going to bring, what the opportunities are going to be. Maybe this will all dry up and fade away, um, and then I have to go back to waiting tables. So
Mm. What that really kind of that touched something for me where I was thinking about that a few days ago. Like, oh my God, I have to go work in a restaurant or something if everything fails. So I understand, like, you have been a person who is not shy, who would not shy away from opportunities or working hard. And at the same time, if things don't go well, you have a plan. So, what is the uncertainty really about?
yeah, it just seems like you know um, I don't know. I just seem to be like waiting for someone to tell me to just go do it. And I've had people, got a lot of people in my network who do this sort of work themselves, and they're like, "You would be great at this," and they're like, "We've had no regrets when we did this," and um, so I'm not. I don't know what it is that's, really holding me back, but I just can't seem to find the motivation to have that conversation with my boss and just be like, I'm done, I'm out. So not sure exactly why I can't just do that.
Yeah, I find that, and there are like some words I'm adding here. Like that's the nature of fear. I find it. It's often very like it doesn't. There's just fear, and it doesn't like give us anything, or sometimes very this vague, very vague idea of what can happen, what would happen, etc. Right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and
what do you imagine? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say when I'm like I teach people how to do things that they're very scared when they're doing them. And when I'm teaching that, it's easy to break things down. I'm always telling people, you need to break them down into the smallest possible task that you need to perform. So it's just one thing after another. It's very easy for them to understand. You put it in language that's very clear for them. And I've done that with this transition into, uh, full-time entrepreneurship. So, and I've kind of, I've started setting up the framework. I've got the speaking, I've got the books, I've got, the consulting work kind of lined up. And then that next step is quitting your job. And that just seems like such a big, like now, once you do that, now you're fully invested. And, you know, so that's kind of like the one big step. So yeah, something about it just, you know, makes me hesitate, makes me stop.
Hmm. What's that like, stopping yourself and not taking that step that you already know you should?
Yeah, it's disconcerting. It's like, I mean, I've always been a very confident person. Even when I, get the imposter syndrome before going up on stage, I can tell myself, like, look at all the things that you've done and look at what you've accomplished and look at all the things that people have told you. Um, so, seeing something right in front of you where you feel like you could just reach out and grab it, but you just can't motivate yourself to do it. It's a very like disempowering feeling. It's like, oh, what is it that I'm struggling with? Why can I not just admit that I'm capable of doing this? And why can't I see that potential in myself? And I can't really identify what the hangup is.
Hmm. Is there a story that you see that is running for you during those times that you feel that you feel disconcerted, disempowered?
A story that's running for me, like,
Like an identity, like I am.
yeah, I mean, I tell myself, like every week I have a one-on-one conversation with my boss, and you know, the day before I'm having my one-on-one, I'm like, all right, this is it. This is the week. I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna put in my notice. Um, and then I don't do it. And we get off the call and I'm like, oh well, next week, maybe I'll do it next week. And um, it's difficult to deal with that week after week and be like, why can I not just commit? Why can I not do this one thing? I do all these other things and I have no problem with it. Um, but something is just, preventing me from having that conversation.
Hmm. I'm getting the sense that you're waiting for the fear to go away and not have that feeling of disempowerment or feeling disconcerted. Did you say that?
Hmm.
Yeah. How does that land for you?
Yeah, I mean, so much of my life I have like leaned into fear and leaned into discomfort. Um, so, part of me thinks that I'm almost like this is such a large decision. And there's so much uncertainty involved in it that, part of me feels like I almost need that. Like, I need to have that fear. I need to be able to deal with that every week, that I'm getting something out of it. Um, but I think I'd be getting, or either that, or I'm like afraid of, once I do get through that and I make that step and have that conversation, then there's going to be even more fear and uncertainty, because now I'm like completely committed and now it's all on me. And, then what am I going to do? Um, Even though I've planned that out, there's a lot more at that point where, I've got all these potential clients. What if I reach out to them and they're all like, no, I can't this year. Our budgets have dried up. We can't do any work with you. Um, so I don't know if it's, um, if the fear itself is keeping me from making that choice or from having that conversation. Um, but something's holding me back.
What are you kind of present to in yourself right now in this moment? Any emotions, feelings, sensations?
I'm going to jump in right there. Let you off the hot seat for a moment, Brian, but a moment. You're doing really great, Monica. I'm really appreciating your use of silence, like allowing spaciousness in the conversation, especially when you have another face here. It can be even more challenging to hold silence. So what are you present to? As coach, what are you holding and present to in this conversation?
Um, I'm present to this knock inside my head that we don't know where we are getting Brian to. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of a little bit like there's this experience of not knowing where we are in the conversation and not knowing what to do next. And so
For you or for Brian or?
I'm sensing that for me, and I'm guessing that that's the experience that Brian finds himself in when he is planning to make the jump and talk to his boss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I am holding and checking for.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I asked him what is he feeling and present to right now.
Got it. Okay, great. So there's like a couple things I can see that I'm just going to speak. You may be aware of these, you may not. They're not necessarily the place to go, but they're just some of the things I'm noticing. So the one is like the exploration of the context of uncertainty. So there's uncertainty, of course, right? That's going to be baked into any entrepreneurial venture. And you started to poke a little bit at like what Brian makes uncertainty mean and what's scary about it. And it got to the point of like, I don't really know, but there's something.
Yeah.
Right. So always juicy when I don't really know shows up, because it's like, oh, here's the unexplored territory. And then we've kind of moved away from that. Not right or wrong, but just that's something I noticed. So it might be healthy healthy, that's the wrong word, helpful to distinguish that context with Brian. Like, what does he learn to do in the face of uncertainty? What are the strategies that he's learned to adopt? What does he make it mean? What is he afraid of? What is his fear shouting at him? Dude, it's uncertain. And if you go down this path, here's what's probably going to happen. And then what that can do is it can start to bring it can make a lot of sense. Like, oh, well, no wonder I keep showing up to these calls with my boss and then pulling away. You could also explore, and I think you did this a little bit, like you're kind of exploring how does it feel for you to be in that? So you're exploring a little bit of like the experience of this, but I don't think he necessarily has a sense of even the idea of a context, or that this is like a way of being about that is something that can be chosen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wanted to bring in context, but I thought that would be like our lingo. And instead, I was trying to explore the relationship to uncertainty from like different angles.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we got paused because of like the I don't know, which is great actually, Brian. Like nothing wrong about that. That means that we are in like the right place. Um, so yeah, I'm finding myself a bit lost on how to introduce that without introducing it as a concept.
Yeah. So you could, one thing you could do is just not stop at the I don't know and keep exploring that. The some of the other stuff I'm noticing, like that might support, is like declarations. Also, like another place you could explore is like, what is that Brian feels he would like, what does he need to make the leap?
Yeah, that's a
Because
good
that's
one.
kind of missing, right? It's sort of
Right.
like this week and then next week and then next week. The nice thing about a declaration is it forces our hand. Oh shit, I'm going to do this in 2 months. What do I need to make sure I have in place? And then once that declaration is on the table, it's going to drive up all the fear. But what if, what if? And then you can explore that fear. Because it's the fear ultimately that's holding things in check, right? That part makes sense?
Yeah.
The other thing I'm noticing is like a little bit of at the effectness. This is our jargon as opposed to being at cause. So like once things get into place, as opposed to this is the point by which I want to do this, and then what do I have to make happen to do this? Aside from, it might not just be, it sounds a little bit in Brian's conversation that it's most like I just have to tell my boss. And that might be, but his fear might have some other stories like, well, but also you have to X, Y, and Z. And so some of that might be a bit missing from the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Where's this leaving you?
I think putting a little more structure of the declaration and then coming back from that would give us a little more hands around the issue that we are talking about.
Great. Last thing I'm curious about is like, what's the bold thing you're not saying or asking?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah, as a question.
Let's see. I think what I'm present to is Brian seems like a person, if he sets his mind on something, he will do it, whether whatever may come in the way. So I am really curious about, is it really fear, or is it something else? Like, is it really about waiting tables, or is it about his boss thinking of something about him, or other people thinking,
Yeah,
judging
nice.
him a certain way?
Great. Yeah. So one of the things I notice is like you're coaching very well. There's not been a lot of points where I need to jump in and be like, whoa, like, let me just pump the brake a little bit. Right. But part of what feels like it might be missing a little bit is like almost a willingness to make a bit of a mess. And I want to acknowledge like it's a weird setup, right? Like this is live, all of that, you're getting feedback, et cetera, et cetera. And all the same, part of what makes coaching potent at times is when we're just like, here's the bold thing I got to say. Maybe I'll make a mess. Let's find out. So that's like 68 different things you can work on, and you have 10 minutes left.
Thanks, Adam.
So can I hand it back to you from there?
Yes.
Perfect.
Brian, after that wonderful interruption, what are you getting so far in our conversation?
Yeah, I mean, just getting some perspective on the fact that my hesitancy to actually drop the bomb on my boss, may be more than just uncertainty about the future. You know, I've never really had a problem like committing to things or jumping into things or taking opportunities, but I find a lot of the times when I take those, and my wife tells me this all the time, I feel like I'm not the best person for the job, or that I'm like, you know, even when I'm speaking, I'm like, I called her up the other day. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was at dinner with all these, you know, great speakers." And she's like, "You've got to stop being such a fanboy and realize that you're on the same level as them. You're speaking at the same event. You've got the same crowds. You've got the same." Like, yeah. So, you know, it's back to that imposter syndrome, that wondering if, you know, if I'm good enough, if I'm competent enough. Um, and so not being able to pull the trigger with my boss, it's an easy way to kinda not have to put myself in the position where I've really gotta prove that, or really gotta lean into, um, you know, my confidence about that. You know, I find that even in my hobbies, I'll be doing something that I've done for 30 years, and I'll be doing it with a different group of people, like a new group of people, and I'll be like, "Ah, I don't know if I'm not really sure if I'm gonna be at the same level as you, or if I'm gonna be good enough to be in your group," or, and then I do it, and it usually works out great, and I'm fine. Um, so, you know, I think that some of it is, you know, um, the internal conversations that I have with my self-confidence are much different than what I exude, externally a lot of times.
Hmm. So it seems like you're avoiding feeling that by not taking this step.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not putting myself in a position where I have to prove that to myself, where I have to trust myself to be able to deliver. You know, even though like the clients I have lined up are people who I've worked with before, who I've over delivered to before, and you know the events that I'm speaking at keep reaching out to me to come back and speak again because you know it worked out so well. Um, so I'm not sure, you know, the external feedback I'm getting is all positive and reassuring that I'm fully capable. And but then the internal conversation is that, you know, maybe you're not able to pull this off.
Hmm. So, like, the thing I'm noticing is that, well, what's coming up for me is that you are reliable to take a step when you say that you will, like, even though it's scary, even if it's uncertain, and you have all the plan around it, and you have people believing in you. But why where you hold yourself back is when this feeling gets very intense. So would it be fair to say that you're afraid of feeling the feeling that experience of not being good enough or not the best at the job?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to be in a position where, I mean, I love being like I love doing new things where I know going in that that I don't have the knowledge, that I don't have the experience, because that's where you grow the most. That's where you know experience the most like um, evolution. But when it's something that I feel like I should be the expert, I've been doing this for years. I have all the knowledge and the experience, the expertise. I've done this before. So putting yourself in a position where now, you know, you have to face the fact that, or you have to believe in yourself enough, I guess, to take that next step and to commit to, you know, that new future plan.
Hmm. um, what's the when So when Adam said earlier about the about declaration, right? It's a concept we use in coaching, or in the specific type of that work that me and Adam do. We say a what we are going to do by when. Would that support you in this moment to have that in the space for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of accountability. some of the biggest, changes that I've made in my life, and um, opportunities that I've ended up pursuing were because I told somebody else I was going to do it, and then that forced me to commit to that. So I could, yeah, that that could definitely be something. I tend to follow through and do things that I tell people that I'm going to do.
Okay, cool. So tell us, we are ready for you.
Next week, I'm going to tell my boss that I'm done. I'm going to quit my job.
Awesome. So, given that when you have tried to have that conversation before, like something stopped you, what would you need to put in place so that when you have this conversation next, you don't like choose out?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, and it's self-imposed barrier. A lot of times we will start off our one-on-one conversations where she will launch right into, um, you know, tasks on my plate, different things that I need to make sure I'm doing and deadlines and stuff like that. So I think to alleviate that and to prevent that from happening, I need to make a separate appointment with her where it's not a one-on-one, where I'm just, where I can lead the conversation and come right in, where she's not exactly sure what the point of the conversation is going to be about. Um, so I think that would probably be a better way to set myself up so that I start right off by leading and I can go right into kind of the points that I've already set my script up for that conversation and rehearsed it several times. Um, so I think putting myself in a position where I'm leading the conversation and doesn't start right off with all these things that she's going to tell me that I need to do. And I'm like, well, I should probably do those things before I before I turn in my notice. Um, so I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So, with this feeling that we have explored a while ago of like not being best at this coming job, coming career, or even the tasks that she might give you, or anything else, if that experience comes up for you again, how might you like get ahead of that? What might you put in place to not choose out when that happens?
Yeah, and I often go back to um, what Jay Akunzo told me one time is that for public speaking, he said, you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the best, biggest expert in the room. You just have to be their favorite. And
Mhm.
I know that my clients, I am their favorite, and they keep coming back to me because of the way that I work with them and support them. Um, so keeping that in mind and realizing that the imposter syndrome is okay. It's all right if I'm not the best. I don't have to be the best. I have these people who I've worked with before who know the value that I bring. They keep coming back to me. They keep reaching out to me. So I can take that and lean against that when I start feeling like I'm not good enough. Um, because I know that they think I'm good enough. And that's really what matters when it comes to running a business or having a community or having an audience. You just have to have people that you're their favorite. You're the one they want to work with.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good like reframe of like we have all these stories that show up, right? And that would be such a great reframe. And is there like a way you can practice that outside of the conversation that will help you in the conversation or in your business going forward?
Yeah, I do that a lot currently. Like, when I was speaking last week, super nervous before going up on stage, and then being able to look out in the audience and see friends out in the audience, peers out there who were sitting there waiting to hear me talk. So knowing that what I was going to share was valuable. So realizing the value that you bring to something. And I tell people this all the time when I'm mentoring people or coaching people on speaking, newer speakers. I'm like, you just have to be a little bit farther ahead of where they are. You don't have to be, you know, super experienced, 20 years of doing this. You just have to have knowledge that they don't have yet, and you share that, and that can make a difference. And I think that's the same way when you're dealing with consulting clients. You're not an expert in their industry or in their work. You're an expert in your work, or you have more knowledge than they do about your particular field. Um, so I think, keeping that front of mind for me, um, reminding myself of that um, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the skills to be able to deliver more than what they're even expecting from me. So I think that's important for me to tell myself before I go in and have this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a very like an empowering way to remind yourself that, because it's very clear that you are a person of community, of service, and you like really connect to people. So then just being like, I'm gonna help them with this half step or one step would be such a great way to practice that. Cool. All right. I think we are up at the hard stop that Adam told us. Um, Usually I would wind down a coaching session differently, but I think I'll stop here.
Great. Okay, got it. So great work, Brian. Great work, Mounica. So I got a couple of things for you, Mounica, but first I want to check in and just see like anything present for either of you on the tail end of this conversation. Like Brian, anything that's up or anything you were surprised by or noticed or related to this conversation today?
Yeah, I thought this was fascinating. I'm a huge fan of coaching, therapy, and it's been very interesting kind of seeing the back end of the process and hearing a little bit of input and guidance on that. And definitely, it always gets me thinking of things from a different perspective when someone else is, asking you those questions about these things you're thinking so much about, but you tend to think of them from, with your blinders on
Yes.
and very focused on the problem itself instead of remembering that there's a whole world of experiences and personal, um, thoughts that get in there and have an impact on why you're making the decisions you're making. So,
Well said. How about you, Mounica?
Well, I am present to like what a fascinating person Brian is, and
Yes.
he is just so open and so like committed to his work and to like helping people and helping his clients, helping the industry itself. Like that's one thing, and another thing is in my own practice, I am playing at this edge of like letting go of the framework and trusting my judgment
Yes.
a tad more.
Yeah.
And oh my god, it's hard because I've played that way quite a bit, and yeah, that was there for me a little bit during
Thanks
this
for calling
session.
that. What's a quality of being you're present to in Brian's essence coming into this conversation?
Commitment.
Nice. I got adventure. Like I put that guy on any project and the project's going to be more adventurous, more out there. It's perfect. Makes complete sense, Brian, that you would be supporting people to like forge into this crazy new frontier that we're pushing into. It would make complete sense that like in your hobbies and everything you're up to, you go towards like, leaving the safety of the known. And then it would also make sense for me that like there's a part of your fear from what you've shared that would grip a hold of the known and the safety, like our fear often shows up as the opposite of who we truly are. So it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to get to be present to that. So a couple of things for you, Mounica. I think like bringing a declaration in, especially in a situation like this, sooner can really support, because that's the where the client wants to get to ultimately, right? And I got to imagine that upon making a declaration, that's going to drive stuff up. When I make a declaration, especially if I haven't done it before, it's going to drive up my like sense of like, well, I said it, but I'm not going to fucking do it anyhow. And I'm not putting that on Brian. That's what would be here from me. Or there might be like, shit, I got stuff to do. I can't do that, but I'm saying it, you know, just to say it, or any number of things. And the nice thing, once we have a declaration on the table, is all of the stuff that's going to get people stuck is going to make itself known in that moment. Because that happened so late in the call, we didn't really get to explore that too much. So that can be a powerful thing to work with sometimes. It's like, let's get that declaration in place. Great. By when are you going to do this thing, first of all? And then we'll see what shows up, and then you can coach that stuff. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I've got two other parts. So the second part is like really, there's what would you describe as, well, here, I'll speak to the audience first so that they can understand the jargon I'm going to then ask you about. So in this lineage of work, ontological work, we say there's like the content of what there's for us to do, leave my job. Then there's the context underneath it, which dictates all of how we feel, all of our fear, all of how we approach leaving our job, all of how we avoid leaving our job, all of that. It's like an internal dialogue or story or set of beliefs along with a bunch of other stuff. So what would you say is the context? We call that part the context. There's the content of what we're going to do, and then the context we have. What would you say is the context at play for Brian?
I'm trying to like get this right.
Yeah, don't. Knock that off.
Let me mess it up then.
Yeah, great.
I think I think the context is that fear shouldn't be there, or like, oh, of course fear is going to be there. I just have to, lean in.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm present to those. And I'm the second one, like, oh, fear will be there, but I just have to do this anyhow. Occurs kind of like the fix to the first one.
Right.
Like fear shouldn't be there is one. And then the other one that I'm really present to is like, I might like some flavor of I might fail, or I might look dumb, or I might not be up to do this. And then from that concern, there's like an endless amount of stuff we can do to try to make it go away, which will never work. Right. And the thing that might have served in this situation would be to just be to share what you know to be true about fear, and then to check it out with the client. Anytime, of course, we share something we know to be true about fear, we want to then immediately come back to the client, like, how does that sit with you? What's your belief about that? But it occurs a bit like for Brian, there's this, people might think I'm not good enough or dumb, and I just need to find ways to convince myself that that's not the case. Did you catch that part? Right? Like, I just need to remind myself, people in the crowd love me. And that's true, but also some of those people aren't going to like him. Assuming he's open to the abundance of life, right? Assuming he's not putting his thumb on the scale. And that's the breakthrough path, right? That's the breakdown to step through to create the breakthrough result, is that on some level, he's going to have to become cozy a little bit with the discomfort that comes from, like, maybe people are going to tell me to fuck right off, or are going to like pull out their phones and just start listening to them instead of me, or, whatever the thing happens to be. And that, I would say, in this conversation, we didn't get a chance to dig into. And that would be really juicy place to explore.
I was aware of that. Like, the practice that we arrived at was kind of mixed. And one was the time thing. I didn't want to push a little more. Yeah. And another thing that I saw for Brian was this feeling of everything not going according to his plan, and like everything drying up. That might be there, and that might be something that he has to like sit with.
Yes.
So I saw him a little bit like trying to solve that problem quite ahead so that he can avoid feeling that experience.
Yeah, really well seen. So one thing that might support where Brian's at and what you're up to, Brian, would be, Mounica, to have that like a follow-up conversation with him where you just explore that context, because that could be really potent. Now there's a declaration on the table. shit, here's the stuff that I'm worried is going to happen if I follow through with that. And then you can start to explore what he makes that mean.
Right.
Because as you know, our fear is like, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. And then there's a bunch of stuff our fear guides us to do to protect against that stuff happening. And then, of course, that just keeps us in that cycle where we can't seem to move beyond it or anything along those lines. So that could be a really beautiful conversation to have on the heels of this one, like a single follow-up conversation, to the extent that that is something you guys are interested in. But I think that would be really powerful, because then what Brian's going to get at is not just, I got to take the action and just get over myself, which isn't really what we're about, but also like, oh, no wonder I've been avoiding this. Because my fear tells me a story, and that story is borne out in reality on some level. You know, all of that stuff is going to start to make way more sense. And usually I find one of the places coaching is ironically very powerful is it helps our fear become like really, we start to relate to our fears like sensible and smart and logical, given where we currently sit. You know, we're like, oh, no wonder I'm doing that. This isn't about me being flaky or lazy or dumb or stupid or whatever the story is. Of course I'm doing that, because right now what exists is a belief that if I do this, then this is going to happen, and then that'll happen, and that's very frightening, and I don't want to have that happen. Of course I would be avoiding this. Then we can come to terms with that, and then we can create a new belief to start to come from. I'm saying a lot of words. This is making, you're sitting very still, Mounica. I want to check and make, okay, good, you're smiling. That's a good sign.
No, it's just that all of that is making sense.
Yes.
And I'm just like sitting with the impact of like, oh, we were not able to get there in 1 hour. And,
yes. Yeah.
And
that's
like,
perfect.
that's a little like, oh no. So yeah.
Yeah, I find in this work, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was saying like this is available over like a longer period of like certain conversations, right? Which is so fulfilling and so nice to be with. And yeah, that's why.
It's a combination of both, I find. Like, of course, we're moving people an inch forward at a time, not hitting a home run.
Right.
Just getting them, I'm mixing my metaphors, or maybe I'm bringing them together, like getting them on base instead of hitting the ball out of the park every time. But we also are learning to catch these inflection points in the conversation sooner. So then it's like, oh, I think a declaration might serve a little bit sooner. You bring that a little sooner, and then that next part of the conversation can come forward a little bit sooner. So that's, you don't have to make yourself wrong. You've done really beautiful work here. And then it's sort of like, oh, got it. There's the next conversation. And then the next time you're in this kind of place, you'll probably see things with a little more clarity. That's how this kind of stuff evolves. Cool. Okay. Brian, how do people learn more about you? You're obviously up to like 1 million super cool things. Where do they find out about your speaking? Where do they go for all that?
You can go to brianwpiper.com and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Cool. brianwpiper.com, all one word, no hyphens or weird characters or anything.
That's correct.
Cool. And what are like, would they come to you for, it sounds like you're consulting, speaking, anything else you're up to?
Yeah, I'm working with people on integrating AI into their workflows, into their marketing, and then content optimization, content marketing. It's my primary focus.
Oh, cool. Very, very cool. Oh, and Alex has put your website. Thank you, Alex, for doing that. Alex, one of our Forge members, put the website in there in the comment.
Excellent.
So beautiful. What's one of your hobbies?
Skydiving. I've been a skydiver
Of
for
course.
35 years. I've been teaching people how to do it for 25 years. So yeah.
Of course you are. It's just
Adventure.
Yeah. What a skydiver. Okay, cool. Mounica, what about you? Where do people find out more about you and learn about what you're up to?
I'm on LinkedIn and Substack, and search my name. You'll find me there.
And your name is with a U. It's spelled like Mounica, but it's pronounced Mounica.
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. LinkedIn, Substack, anywhere else?
Not really, just those two places. And what I'm up to, I'm up to a couple of exciting things. Of course, I have like my one-on-one practice where I'm coaching leaders, leading teams, communities, or families even. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also supporting teams now. And we are doing some workshops and even supporting teams long-term in tech companies. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And if anybody wants any help around in those areas, please reach out.
Sweet. What is one sort of like situation or circumstance in which people should reach out to like have a conversation with you when they're in tech, like something that they would notice happening on their team or they'd become aware of?
Yeah. Uh, so if there's some sense of disconnection and siloed work that like one of the patterns that I notice happening in tech teams is people are really great. They get together, do very interesting work, they meet milestones, they like go after the next thing, next thing, next thing. What tends to happen is people slowly like have these interpersonal issues and that are hard to put a finger on, and it will look like disconnection. It will look like somebody stuffing frustrations under the rug and like bringing in nice professionalism on top of it.
Mm.
And the problem with ignoring those things is that the breakthrough results won't be available for the team. So if there's a sufficiently highly ambitious goal for the team, like 5x results in 5 years, or release this cool new AI product, even though there's so much competition in the world. So when there's like all that ambition,
Yeah.
when people hit uncertainty, these personal issues crop up and they take the team down.
Cool. Very cool. Awesome. Okay. And then I will very quickly plug the Forge. So if you enjoy this kind of conversation, if you're like, man, I would like feedback on my coaching, or I'm just interested in having this like leadership tool that is coaching and developing leadership, if you're interested in having that demystified or becoming more masterful in this way of being with people, you should come hang out with us in the Forge. Mounica is a member of our leadership team. We train a lot of this and develop the qualities of being that allow us to be with people in a really potent way. So you can learn more about that at evergrowthcoaching.com/the-forge, Forge. Sounds kind of funny in my mouth as I say it, the Forge. Okay, Brian, thank you so much for your being and everything you brought. Mounica, thank you for your courage. I just want to like take a very quick moment to let everyone know, like, it looks easy to do this. It's like, oh yeah, heck yeah, why not? And Monica's a lunatic, like to show up and be open to feedback and to do this live. Brian is too. They're both crazy people, but this is really like skydiving in a lot of, I shouldn't even say that because Brian will correct me, but it's a truly courageous, vulnerable thing to bring yourself into a space like this and be open to feedback in the moment. It takes a lot to let that in. So Mounica, thank you for what you modeled and just how you received it and your grace as always. And Brian, thanks for your willingness to just come out and play. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll have this up on the podcast soon. And until then, have an amazing weekend. And now you guys just hang tight with me. I'm going to end this stream.